Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the now finally nearly concluded, almost 2-year-long lawsuit between Lauren the Mortician as well as eventually her lawyer in the lawsuit against 4 content creators who made fun of them a little bit. Very reasonable stuff all around. Today's story takes us back into the K-pop community. And normally I know I'm making these from the perspective of like, how do I explain this to someone who has no idea about anything relating to this topic? But I know that the people from the communities I talk about do end up watching my videos. So if you are a K-pop fan of basically any kind, I want you to come to the front and sit down. This is a very special episode. The background's pretty simple on this. It's just understanding the industry as it functions. K-pop groups as they exist today are functionally just the latest iteration of the same type of thing we've seen for years now, where a company chooses to recruit people for a specific image to sing specific songs that are usually written for them, etc. Danity Kane, the Pussycat Dolls, One Direction, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, O-Town, Spice Girls, New Kids on the Block. 4-Town, actually, from the movie Turning Red. Perfect example. These days, there's certainly a lot more flexibility in what counts as certainly K-pop. Like, it's not just pop music. That's the first thing most people who are into it will tell you. A lot of them make their own music these days or produce their own music for their groups. Find the groups that do that because they're always the best. All to say that just what it means to be someone who's in a girl group or a boy group has changed over time. And a lot of those like more specific tropes have been relaxed. One thing that hasn't changed though, because it is consistently and reliably financially beneficial to do, and thus is driven by the companies that represent these groups, not necessarily the groups themselves, is portraying each of the members of the group as a dream, a fantasy, quite literally an idol. That term isn't used half-heartedly. Like the companies, and usually the artists themselves, want you to idolize this person, to love them. Because obviously consumers are far more likely to invest their time and money into things that they love. That's why there's like a pretty standard 5-year dating ban when a group debuts, because they belong to their fans for that amount of time. And even after that, you can see how intensely they try to hide their relationships or just don't do them at all and try to avoid rumors from dating because they know that it will cause such anger among their fandoms. The entire thing is set up to foster infatuation. That's how more money is made. And that's also why nothing really fully compares to the intensity of a concert full of like teenagers and early 20-somethings screaming for like a boy band. And also why, unfortunately, some K-pop fans can act kind of insane. So, what happened? Stray Kids, which is a K-pop group that I've gotten more and more into since I covered them for another story last year where they were disrespected at the Met Gala, recently had a situation at an airport. Something that has become incredibly normalized in the K-pop stan community is going to the airport specifically because you know your favorite K-pop group is leaving or coming through that airport for something. This particular time, unfortunately, Stray Kids got absolutely mobbed. It was a complete shit show, actually. There were so many people crowding into them constantly as they were just desperately trying to make their way, I believe, to a car. They did have bodyguards with them and like a significant number, it looks like, but there was just such a volume of people around them that like it was like them, the bodyguards, and then these crowds. It was insane. People were right up against their car when they were trying to get into it. They were cowering. They looked terrified. And at one point, this woman like pushed through one of the bodyguard lines and ran into the members directly. Like, it was pretty bad. And for the people who do listen to K-pop and like keep up with it, you know that when stuff like this happens, like there isn't universal support for them. Certainly they do get support from most people, but even with this instance, like for days after this happened, the member who got hit by the woman who broke through the bodyguards, his stage name is Lino. When the incident is being talked about, a particular video is being used and it looks like his shoulder moves as she pushes through. And so people are saying that he pushed her. Thankfully, even with that, there were people mostly saying, even if that happened, like, that's okay. She deserved it. But just for the record, I have watched the video a lot and I don't believe that's what happened. I think it's the bodyguard next to him that pushes the woman away, not him. And I'm sure they are trained to not put hands on fans or just anyone because of how bad it can look externally. But as soon as that idea is even put out there, they start getting hate. Now they're ungrateful. Now they don't appreciate their fans. Now, like, what? They think they're better than their fans? Why did they even want to be idols? And they can't say anything to defend themselves. The vast majority of the time, there at most would be like an official statement through the company, but they don't get to just come out and be like, that's not what happened. Can I talk to you? They have to deal with it. And then if people don't believe them because they just want to hate them, because there are people who just, it's like snark subreddits, like for all of these groups, there are people who just make it their whole personality to hate them too. They just ride this stuff for months. Now, to be fair to the fandom, there was a lot of outcry after this happened for better security, more bodyguards, you know, yelling at the fandom and saying like, you guys have to stay back, you can't get this close to them, and generally saying like, obviously it's not okay to try and touch them. That is sasaeng behavior. Small aside for that, a sasaeng is an actual confirmed like proud stalker fan for K-pop idols. We'll talk about it more in a second. And I do think it's great that the fandom seems to be actively working to try and be better. Here's the thing. It's not working. This has happened so many times that it's almost hard to count, and they've gotten hurt because of it multiple times. The leader of Stray Kids, this guy who goes by Bangchan as his stage name, he was so pissed off that this happened again that he went on to, there's a personal messaging app that they use for those artists, and it's called Bubble. He completely wiped his bio and his profile, and he didn't post for like a solid week, which sounds like whatever, but for him was a lot. That dude posts a shit ton in there. I cannot think of, especially for him, a clearer expression of how angry he is that this happened and keeps happening. And it feels very much like no one is particularly interested in how Bangchan feels or Lino feels or anybody else feels about this. Because I am quite literally seeing people saying how awesome it is that Stays got Bangchan so angry because they think he's really hot when he's angry. I'm seeing people try and romanticize the whole thing where the girl busts through the bodyguards because people like to ship Lino, the guy who got hit by her, and one of the other members who was standing next to him. So people are saying, oh my gosh, he was protecting him and like pushing that girl away. Isn't that cute? And let me be so clear, this does not just happen to Stray Kids. This happens constantly to groups and has forever, and it's just getting worse. So possibly hot take, but I feel like people really need to hear this. Regardless of how you do it, how respectful you are, how much space you give, etc. Going to the airport to meet these idols as they are going from the airplane to the car, or vice versa, is sasaeng shit. It's sasaeng shit. Going back to that term sasaeng, sasaengs are people who violate that boundary between professional and personal. It is completely fine for you to go to an event that the idol is being paid to go to or is promoting their music at or whatever, and to wait for them afterwards, to show up early to see if you can catch them arrive, to do any of that stuff. Just because they're in public for any reason does not mean that they're there for your consumption. And to follow them in any capacity outside of like a paid engagement at the place you're at is stalking. It does not matter how politely you stalk someone, you should not stalk someone. This applies to any situation where they aren't paid to be there for an engagement, like a fan meeting or a music show performance or a concert or something. Anything outside of that is sasaeng behavior, and we have to start calling it what it is. If that's not enough to convince you, then I'll put it this way. Whether you think you're a sasaeng or not, they do. Idol groups are terrified to go to the airport. And even when they look like everything's fine and people are giving them space and, you know, being respectful, the absolute best you get from them is full-on hoodies and the face masks and like as they walk through. You think that's somebody who's enjoying what's happening right now? When you go to the airport just to camp out for these guys and see them, I need you to know that when they see you, they react to you like they would a rabid dog in the street. Whether you have good intentions or respectful or not or anything, doesn't matter. You are causing an intense fear response in them that they have to mask. And if you care more about your desire to see them than you do about their fear at not being able to be safely in a place because of your presence, nothing's more sasaeng than that. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you've done this before, just don't do it again and don't let your friends do it. And the first step to that is acknowledging that it's sasaeng shit to do. Because this has not improved. Over the years, it has gotten worse and worse and worse. People are getting hurt, and I am genuinely really concerned that we're gonna have a repeat of what happened to Princess Diana.